must be Sarah.
I am,
Nice
yes.
to meet you, Sarah.
Yeah, and
Hi,
you're,
Kat.
nice to meet you, Kat.
Kim.
Kim, great.
Yes.
Nice to meet you. Wonderful. Well, this is just a brief PowerPoint to get us going, but the idea is if you are looking to grow, you want to be sustainable. So one thing that I have found critical is I've led some nonprofits, I own my own business now, is to identify what's a leader versus a manager. And if you're trying to grow something, you absolutely want to be a leader over a manager. Does anyone know what the difference is between a leader and a manager?
Someone who creates vision and someone who manages vision.
Okay, so someone who creates the vision and someone who manages.
Operationally.
Yeah, operationally. Very good. So absolutely, a big part of that is empowerment. So leaders have the vision and they empower people to help carry out their vision, whereas managers tell them what to do. So a big part of empowering is also looking at, are you delegating or are you empowering? Does anyone know what the difference is between delegation and empowerment?
Black box.
Explain what a black box looks
Well,
like.
if you give people what they need on the front end and give them an outcome that's desired, if you're delegating, you're actually giving them every step along the way. And if you are empowering them, you give them the input they need and the output that you expect and allow them to get their output.
Okay, so what she was saying is for the delegate, you're leading them along every step of the way. Do A, then B, then C, and it's almost like a micromanagement type thing. Compared to empowering is you give them information and resources at the front end and cast the vision for them of where you would like to see it at the end result. So great. So what are things you can empower people in your organization to do? So as if you've started out small and you want to grow, you have to let some things go because one person cannot do it all. So what you need to do is identify things that others can do to take it off your plate and to help you to grow. So what is the number one thing a leader cannot delegate or empower others with? And you've said it several times. Vision. The leader is the vision keeper and the vision caster of the organization. And when I was first starting, I used to think that we had your marketing, you have your development, you have your product, you have your employees, you have everything kind of compartmentalized. But as I came to find out, everything works together. You have your small gears, your large gears, it's all designed together. And so once you can get away from the compartmentalized feeling, this person is only in this department, but really everything everybody does in an organization, from the marketing to the bookkeeping to the vision casting to the development, all works together. And language is also very important. So instead of saying, which would be more of a delegator, is, can you do this for me? Compared to, would you like to be in charge of? Which one would you rather participate in? And how do you get started? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So I like to call it the in-basket mindset. To have things, I used to be executive director of a nonprofit, and so most of my workforce was volunteers. And I created what I called the in-basket mindset. When they came in, they didn't have to ask me each week, what do I need to do? They knew how to check their basket and do whatever was in the basket. And so that's all they had to do. What do I need to do today? Oh, it's right here, instead of always trying to find me, what do I need to do? And then training them how to do that as well. So making it small. You need to take a particular task and write out everything associated with it. Think of one thing in particular of the task and who could do that one thing. And you find a trigger so that it keeps going. Have any of you ever heard of the Rube Goldberg machine? Have you seen a set of dominoes where you knock one down and then the chain just automatically follows? A Rube Goldberg takes that concept and they might have a ball falling into a cup. The cup pulls a string. The string dumps some water. And there, you could Google it, and there's great YouTube videos on Rube Goldberg machines. But you want to keep the workflow going. So when one task ends, it becomes into an in basket for your next person. So as you develop, and you can start to develop job descriptions within your organization, even if you're the only person doing it right now, if you start to develop what you're doing, then as you can get people alongside of you to do that, or you're contracting tasks out, you know, okay, I spend 4 hours a week in bookkeeping. I spend 6 hours a week in development. I spend 8 hours in marketing. That includes social media. I do this much more on my website design. And see what skill sets people need. Maybe you know people that can already help you do it. Talk to them and find a trigger that keeps the project moving forward. Apprenticeship is another great thing. When we all first start doing something, it takes a while to think it through. Think of when you rode a bicycle for the first time. You had to learn balance, your pedaling, your skill set, and we call it unconscious incompetence. You are fully aware that you don't know how to ride a bike. But as you get there, you have conscious, what's called incompetence. You're aware of what you don't know, but you're starting to learn it. Conscious competence, you realize that you're getting better at it, but you're not proficient in it. But then unconscious competence, you can do it and not even think about it. And that's how the apprentice model starts, is once you can do it without thinking about it, how can you help someone who knows nothing about it begin to learn the cycle? And that's what you also want to do in a business. I call it moving the ball forward. Any organization you're in, whether it's your own small business, a nonprofit, a hospital setting, or whatever, it actually is a team sport. You do not work isolated in your organization. You need to be always moving the ball forward. Are you going to run it, pass it, or kick it? And you have to have team meetings to know what you're doing. Sometimes it might move a lot. Sometimes it might move a little backwards, but you always try to get the ball moving forward. And one thing that came, we were doing a potluck luncheon one day, and one of my volunteers brought in a watermelon, and she said, "How do I cut this watermelon?" How many ways are there to cut a watermelon? And there's some artistic watermelons out there. And I could have told her, oh, I want it in slices, I want it in cubes, I want it bite-sized, quartered. I could have explained what I wanted. But you know what, in the long run, did it matter? So by saying you decide, let people make decisions about small things, it helps to strengthen them to make bigger decisions. And for fun, you can Google how many different ways there are. Do that. And then planning is critical. So how often does this task need to occur? Every day, weekly, monthly, quarterly? Put together your calendar of events and share your vision with others to help get them excited. So it's my little PowerPoint, and I don't know who would like to come up and go next.
Well, I'm low tech and high touch. So I don't have a PowerPoint for you. My name is Dr. Catherine Sandy-Lance. I'm a dentist from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And I'm also a mastery level vibrational coach. I teach people how to manifest. And I love your presentation. It was a perfect, the way the universe works, this is such a broad topic. I'm going to talk about corporate culture because that's sort of my passion in my business. I work with 25 women. And we told that to a fellow in the airport in Albuquerque, and his jaw dropped. And I know that often people's association with, all-female workforces is not positive. But we've created a really unique culture that we're really proud of. My clinical manager that runs all 25 of those women is here with me. She's been with me for 20 years, and this trip was her anniversary present. So when we look at corporate culture, we talk about particularly leadership and where that leadership comes from and what that looks like to the people underneath us. I had a perfect segue that happened just before I left Edmonton. I had a girlfriend who's a high-level wellness coach, in an insurance company in Edmonton. And she had a bit of a difficult, challenging boss. And they had an interaction in a meeting, and he kind of ambushed her and spontaneously redirected her up after months of being on a project. And she was really frustrated. And she took the initiative, she's a really wise lady, and decided to have an honest, vulnerable conversation. And she created an email that talked about her experience of herself in that meeting, her experience of him as a leader, and what her expectations of him were, and also of her expectations of herself in her role. The impact of that was remarkable. He emailed her at 2:30 in the morning because he'd read that email 7 times. And her feedback had really highlighted areas that he knew he needed to grow and sort of expand as a leader. And he invited her into his office the next day, and he gave her a copy of a book by Simon Sinek. And I don't know if any of you know Simon Sinek, but he's a fabulous TED Talk person. And that book's title was Together is Better. And that really struck me, because in terms of creating an environment for sustainable and inclusive growth, that has really been our mantra for our corporate culture. It's everything we live privately and professionally. And you know, a lot of us live in sort of a blame-based culture where we want to make everything about everybody else, and that's been our experience in the past of an all-female workplace. So we began to empower our staff with choice and awareness, and began to teach them a sort of an accountability model that began with the assumption that true malice in interactions is actually quite rare. And that most often what happens is that we're all wearing blinders trying to get our own needs met, and we collide with somebody else trying to do the same thing. We also started teaching conflict resolution to our staff in a very supported way. And that began, I'm an NLP practitioner, and one of the things that we look at in that is how we map things. And we asked our staff, when you're in conflict with somebody, take your own perspective off and put it on a chair and interview the person that you're in conflict with and really get a sense of what their goals and motivations are so that you can understand where they're coming from. And we actually talked to them about approach the person that you're in conflict with. Don't outsource, get into gossip looking for an outcome. Your best outcome is not to pollute the environment that you work and live in. It's to really be accountable and vulnerable so that you can make those connections and really develop those relationships. And we invited them to use it not only with the managers in our organization and each other, but with me as the leader. I had to lead that process by living it. And that created an environment of transparency, support, and vulnerability. And those are the 3 big building blocks for intimacy and trust in relationships. And the shift was almost immediate in our organization. It didn't just ripple through the people, it rippled through the environment that we work in. We deal in fear every day. And patients would come into the office and sit down and remark how amazingly healing it felt just to be in the space. We teach that people come to us for a reason. When people get into our hiring process, one of the funny things I say to them is, okay, so why are you here? What is it that you're coming to learn? What I've found over 22 years of doing this is that people come to learn something particular about themselves, to grow, or to heal an old pattern. And that belief system has really shifted even the way that I let staff move on from our process. Because if you believe that that's the truth, then when someone completes their mission, you should send them with blessings and with joy and some sort of celebration because they've really achieved something. Sarah laughs. Our office is the only place where you get a cake when you leave. You know, it's about really creating those important connections and empowering people and making sure that they understand that every single person is an important, integral part of what we create every day. And our process shifted so that even the misfits, there are always misfits in offices, and you know who they are. You probably named them in your organization. Even they began to feel empowered and part of the process. And we talked to the other staff about the fact that they're part of your story. It's not just about them not fitting in. There's something that you could look at and something that you could learn from this person. To stop, look, and choose is an incredibly empowering concept. Incredibly empowering. And what we offered our staff was the opportunity to consciously create the environment that they worked in. And then once they had mastered that, to begin to ripple that out into the other circles of their lives to enrich everyone in their vibrational field. So the change begins with us. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kim Colville, and I came to this place in a very interesting way. I represent a nonprofit called From Books to Brilliance, and we're trying to get books and educational materials to kids in impoverished nations and in rural areas, basically. So we're working basically in Nicaragua and Guatemala right now. But 10 years ago, I had been on a mission trip or a medical trip with a group of doctors from the University of Texas Medical Branch and visited a little school. Long story, but the teacher stood up and said, "These children have no future." And of course I broke down in tears. I waited till I got outside of the little shack that they were having school in, but I broke down in tears. And I thought, I have to do something. So I got back to the United States and I don't know, I wrote a letter to the Dr. Seuss Foundation, and lo and behold, about a month later, I got a check in the mail for $3,000. I was stunned. So now I had this opportunity. I was going to take this $3,000 and work with the medical team again in Nicaragua with the University of Texas Medical Branch, get my niece, who needed some healing because there had just been a major accident, she lost many friends, and my stepdaughter, who was already a Spanish speaker, and we were going to go down and work with the medical team and translate and do books on the side. So everybody told us, "You're going to have to buy the books here. Where are you going to get books in Managua?" And I said, "For God's sakes, they have universities there. There must be children's books. There are rich people in Managua. There must be children's books." "Oh no, you better buy them here. You better ship them down. You'll never find them." And something about that just didn't make any sense to me at all. And I thought, no, we're going to go down. If we find no children's books, we'll just come back and then we'll do the shipping then. So we went down to Managua, hired a taxi driver, told him to take us from one bookstore to the next. We found many books, and we were able to buy 1,000 children's books with that $3,000. We loaded them up on the top of the yellow school bus and took them out to Mulukuku, which takes about 5 hours to get there, through the dirt roads and mud and whatever. But the issue is that we decided to buy locally, mostly because I think we were a little lazy. I did not want to have to ship anything, and I was afraid of customs. I didn't want to do any of that. I just wanted to take my money and go shopping in Managua. So we went shopping, and we got all these fantastic children's books. Many people have said, "Kim, do you work with publishers?" And it's like, "No, I don't." "Well, you could probably get them cheaper." "Yeah, but how would that help the local economy?" So we would be completely cutting the retailers out of their portion. I want, and we want as a company, wherever we go, to have everybody we meet benefit from our process. So the taxi drivers benefit, the hotel room people benefit, the villages benefit in so many ways, but we want the retailers to make some money. And when we're shopping for these books, the clerks are just stunned because we're going through the store and just piling books in. So this has been 10 years now, and now we have our system pretty much down. But the great thing is that when we got them out to the village, we realized what a great way and simple way this was to do things, to get books to different villages. And now we get to invite the community leaders and the librarians to come with us. So they meet us in the capital cities. They shop for their own books. It makes it really sustainable. The bonding is phenomenal, and it gives credence to their cultures. So our mission is really 3 things. We create access to books and educational materials. We feed the local economy in whichever way we can. Maybe we're not getting the best prices for books, but everybody benefits. And the third thing is we connect kids with culture. In Guatemala, we can buy, in Guatemala City now, we can buy books in Cachiquel, in Quiche, and Quechua. They speak 20 different Mayan languages. Guatemala consists of 50% of their culture is Mayan. No one prints books in those languages. How would you make any money, right? So the university in Guatemala has a great project, and they're trying to get books published in the 20 different Mayan languages, even if it's for 5,000 people that speak this language or 4,000 that speak that. So whatever we can buy in Cachiquel, in Quiche, in Quechua, and Nam, we do, and we get them out to the villages. So one of the most precious things I've ever seen is handing a child a book in his own language. This was Cachiquel in Rabinal, and this little kid, who, by the way, the kids all can read. They read from the blackboard at school. That's where they learn to read. They just have nothing to read, so they can't read to learn. They can read, but they can't learn because there's nothing to read. So we handed this child this book, and it was in Cachiquel, and he started reading, and the smile got bigger and bigger, and I have no idea about Cachiquel. I can't tell the author from, when I'm doing inventory, the author from the title. I mean, it's a bunch of X's and K's. So, you know, he's reading in Cachiquel, he gets this big smile on his face, and I said to the teacher, I said, what is he reading? Oh, it's a really famous story that our whole village knows and we tell all the time. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. So, From Books to Brilliance is sustainable because we create these relationships with the villages. We give credence to their cultures, we let them choose their own literature, their own books, and we also feed the local economy.
Hey guys, my name's Quinn Fontaine. I'm a stand-up comic, and I'm not really sure why I'm here. I do know why I'm here. Okay, first of all, I heard some good stuff already. I heard about transparency, vulnerability, honesty. I heard about low-tech, high-touch culture. I get all that stuff. I heard about a lot of good things. So real quick, heart to heart, whose gaydar went off when I started walking up here? Who's like, that's a gay guy? Nope, I'm trans. I'm transgender, female to male, 2.5 years into my transition, pre-operative everything, and just so you're not tracking my body, the whole time I'm up here, I'm going to tell you what's going on. My breasticles, that's right, breasticles are down and over. I have a nipple here and here. That's a lie. Here and here. That's a lie. You look really concerned. See me now. Okay, laughter. That's all I wanted. Just a little laughter. But I am about truth-telling. So here's what, as I'm thinking about this, sustainability, all of these business terms that, you know, business and math, my whole life, it's been something like I just kind of disappear a little bit. But the reality is, April 12th of last month, I celebrated 11 years off crack cocaine. I bottomed out in Los Angeles 11 years ago, wanting to die. Found my way to Santa Fe, New Mexico, to go to a place called, I found it, I was high, half naked, 120 pounds, did not know how to be on this planet. I punched in pre-verbal childhood, I didn't type like that, pre-verbal childhood sexual abuse, multiple addictions help. The Life Healing Center, intensive trauma resolution.
Oh, geez.
Let me reframe that. The Life Healing Center, intensive trauma resolution. My whole body was like, I gotta go there. And down in the bottom it said Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I'd been there once before. So I knew that was where I needed to go to finally get help. So I tell that story because I just celebrated 11 years off crack. It's taken me a long time to clean up everything else. Today, I have 544 days off everything else. That was pills, pot, alcohol. For me, I was so uncomfortable with my life story. I thought I was my life story. And I'm telling you right here, right now, we are not our life story. We get to revise it, rewrite it any chance we get. We are not what happened to us when we had no power as little people. So it took me years to deal with that. And as I continue to do my trauma work, I'm still in trauma healing, and I do all kinds of multiple layers and things of therapy, and I stand like that when I don't feel balanced, just kidding. Finally, I always knew I was trans. I grew up in rural Virginia in the 70s and 80s, before there was a word for me. I'm looking around like, where are my people? Where are my people? Where are my people? Do I have people? I saw a couple gay, I dated women forever, but the word lesbian never really fit for me. I'm a straight guy in this body. And what I'm sharing all this about is my passion has always been theater. Always been theater. But as a little guy in a girl's body in a country town in Virginia, there were not a lot of opportunities for me. I also wanted to dance. But was I ever going to put a tutu on or tights? No. So my point is I'm finally back to essence. And it's been a long and winding road back to essence. But today I can stand in front of you and say, I want to be on this planet. I know there's a reason I'm on this planet. I know there's a reason I didn't die. I touched death a couple times, and I know now that my soul chose to come back because it wasn't done. If you're still on this planet, and if you're dealing with suicidality, if you're dealing with a lot of other stuff, I've dealt with it. I'm here to tell you it's doable, it's healable. If you feel it, we can heal it. And to tie this into the talk here, with sustainability and whatnot, because I thought about that. For years I didn't want to be on the planet, because I really didn't know how to be on the planet. I didn't know how to be in my body, because I'm trans. I didn't know how to be with my life story around being abused as a baby, because that made everything really scary. I couldn't trust anybody. I couldn't trust authority, blah, blah, blah. Long list of reasons why I wanted to check out, It's about microcosm, macrocosm. And I heard that, and I've never, I've worked in a lot of settings, I've done a lot of things, but I've come full circle, and I've done 2 solo shows since my journey. I've done a lot of stand-up in the past, a lot of sketch comedy, a lot of improv. My real passion became telling my truth and doing one-person shows. I've done 2 shows pre-operative. The first show was called Learning to Stay. Learning to stay on the planet, not kill myself. Learning to stay in my body moment to moment, in the truth of it, and not dissociate. And learning to stay in the moment with people. Because it was so hard to be with people. Like I could go be big somewhere and then run and hide. And go to sleep for 2 weeks out of depression and overwhelm. And that's a pattern I've broken. And I'm just here to share that, I'm finally, I did a lot of the trauma healing. I still do some of that work as it comes up. But most of that stuff is cleared. I got real about the fact I knew I had to heal the trauma stuff first. And then if I still felt this uncomfortable in my body, then I'd take the next step. And at first, years ago, I thought the bravest thing I'd ever done was getting on that plane from LA. I missed 2 planes 2 days in a row and got on that 3rd plane, put my crack pipe down, put the alcohol down, and surrendered and said, my life isn't working, my best thinking isn't happening, look at my life. And I had called my therapist, I'll backtrack here, and my shows are available free online. I'd love for y'all to see my work if you're interested. But when I turned to crack, I went to therapy 8 hours later, still high. And I said, yeah, I can't do this kind of intense therapy stuff and smoke crack at the same time. I'll call you when I'm done. She's like, time out. My birth name's Kathleen. She's like, Kathleen, do you get what you're saying? I said, yeah, I do. I don't care. I can't handle it. I can't handle these visions. The memories. I just can't deal. I'm going to go smoke crack. I'll call you when I'm done. And I say that because even in the depths of my despair, there was accountability happening. I called her when I was done. A year and 3 months later, I called her and I said, I can't seem to live. I can't seem to die. I don't know how to live. What's next? Rehab's next. Cut to earlier story, Life Healing Center, blah, blah, blah. So here I am right here realizing that I've done 2 solo shows pre-operative. My first ever book is about to come out. It's called, wait for it, Hung Like a Seahorse. Little dance break. Why not? It's Hung Like a Seahorse, a real-life transgender adventure of tragedy, comedy, and recovery. Because if I don't tell the whole truth, I'm not telling any of the truth. There's a saying in recovery, we're as sick as our secrets. So I don't want to focus on the sick piece, but if we're as sick as our secrets, how well are you? How well am I? It's about wellness. It's about microcosm, macrocosm. If I start working here, mind, body, spirit, everywhere I go starts to work. And it ripples out. And it's beautiful. And I love that we're here. I love that there's hope in this room. I love what I've heard. I love connecting with people. And I'll just end on that. Actually, I'm going to end on this. Come full circle. Thanks, guys.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Roenhorst, and this is such a diverse panel of folks.
Yeah, that's what we loved about the question.
And it's a really incredible opportunity to be able to sort of try to think about what your work means and how it sort of integrates with everything everyone is saying here. But I just want to thank everyone for their story, because stories are how we, maintain ourselves and then reach back for the future. So I'm Navajo. I grew up on the Navajo Nation. I just recently returned to the Four Corners area about 2 years ago from Chicago and other places with my husband, a 6'4" German-Irish man. We had our first son. And in the midst of Chicago, what was clear to me was my son couldn't see himself in the culture, in the community, because it's hard to find American Indians in such an urban landscape. And we decided, I quit my job. A month later, we were here. We didn't know what we were going to do. My actual experience is doing environmental sustainability, looking at environmental challenges, specifically focused in low wealth, vulnerable places, and trying to find market drivers to help them take their environmental challenge and identify an opportunity to take the liability and turn it into an asset. That was my work. I did it throughout the Great Lakes, across the country. So when we came here, I was like, what am I going to do? And it took me about 9 months to birth this idea, which was, why not take the things I had been doing nationally and globally and focus on what I consider one of our most overlooked communities, which is American Indians in this country. As some of you may or may not know, many of our tribal reservations in the United States are considered underdeveloped. They live in developing country world challenges. They face everyday human rights issues: water, electricity, infrastructure, food. And I grew up that way. I grew up with no running water or electricity. Lived a beautiful life. But there's a difference in access, right? Like not being able to access a book to read, which then turns into other books that can grow your education. Not having access to the internet. If you live in America, not having internet, that is a human rights issue, in my opinion. Doesn't matter where you're from. Not having access to the internet, and you live in this country, that's an issue of power. So I started my company about a year ago. It's called Roan Horse Consulting. I need to drop the consulting because it's not really what I do. But the idea was to take these concepts of sustainability through an environmental lens and economic lens, because they work side by side, but then to bring in culture and holistic practices. Because frankly, if we're really going to make any kind of impact, we have to approach it through culture first, spirituality, then we look at the economics, and we look at the environment. But it has to start with who you are and what grounds you in this earth. So I'm going to give an example of a project. When I think about inclusive growth and sustainable growth, I think about how we are addressing our communities of vulnerability. Oftentimes what happens is we have a great idea and we parachute it in. And then we say, hot dog, we did such a good job, pat ourselves on the back, and leave. But if we're not looking at these communities, and I heard culture, credence to culture, if we're not looking at these communities and saying, these communities are resilient because they shouldn't be here. They should be stamped out, but they're not. So they have systems in place. They have culture, they have knowledge, and it's deep. So instead of us coming in and saying, here's my widget to fix your problem, we say, here's my resources and my knowledge, where can I support this? So that's the work that I do. And one of the projects is actually called Cultivating Coders. He's one of my clients. Cultivating Coders is a program that brings coding classes to isolated communities. So we go to a tribal community. We've been working throughout the Navajo Nation. We hope to be working with a couple of tribes in Alabama and Alaska and the Great Lakes next year. But the idea is we have knowledge and resources and tools. We identify local partners. We identify local, economic development drivers. And then we come in, we help find all the money to pay for the classes. So we work with 13 to 18-year-olds, and we're helping them develop coding skills. In the state of New Mexico, last year in 2016, there wasn't a single American Indian student who took a AP math or science class in the entire state. Not one. So we've trained 55 kids. We've given them skills. We started one camp in Shiprock, which is on the Navajo Nation near the Upper Four Corners. 9 students. In 1 year, they started their own coding camp, or coding, after-school coding class. They have 60 coding class members. And they are funding their own projects. They're getting jobs in their local community, building websites. And 2 of them just got into college, going into specifically STEM-focused careers. These little interventions, these little fires, the thing is, what made it work is that we went straight for the culture. We went straight to say, well, these are just tools. Coding is just a tool. What really is special is the spirit and the humanity there. So that project is running, and we are moving across the country. We'd love to be in South America. I think there's opportunity. Again, the challenge is infrastructure, internet. How do you get access? And then the last project I'll just mention, because I'm really proud of it, is a thing called Changing Women Initiative. We're building the first Indigenous birthing center here in New Mexico. There's 2 in Canada, but there's never been one here. And we're creating a bricks and mortar space to increase infant and mother mortality rates, because New Mexico has one of the highest. So it's these ideas of taking what I've learned and focus on American Indian culture and community, really Indigenous communities, but frankly, the work I do really speaks across all rural, isolated spaces. And I just am happy to be here, because when I think of inclusive, sustainable growth, it means we're all at the table. We're all from different cultures and different communities at the table, bringing our expertise, but we're also bringing our hearts and souls. And so that's how I feel about the work I do, which is I bring empathy to create small actions every day to solve larger problems. Thank you.